Most musicians think they're stuck because they need more practice, more repetitions, more workshops, more courses, more woodshedding. But that's not actually the problem. I see this all the time in my students for years, and even with myself. We train, we take lessons, we go through the program and the degree and the workshop and the certification, and we meet with the famous person and we learn their techniques and their style, and we're so technically capable. But when we sit down to create something, to create from our heart, from scratch, from our soul, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like us. It doesn't feel organic. It can be forced or disconnected, or like we're repeating something, or like we're configuring our own human musical algorithm. If we haven't met yet, I'm Emery Pace Archer. This is Music Rebels Rising, where serious musicians break out of the old patterns and finally create music that actually feels like them. Here's the part that most people don't realize. It's not that you don't know enough. It's not that you need more theory, ear training, more practice, or a different kind of system to work around your instrument or to work with your voice. Most of the musicians I talk to already know so much. I can't tell you how many different strategies, tools, and trainings that I've had personally, not just with the wealth of information that I use as a multi-instrumentalist and a singer-songwriter and a composer, but even just for one of those tiny disciplines, just take the violin. It is an exorbitant amount, and you may not realize this, but you are probably an expert if you've been studying for 5 years or more. And if you've been studying at least 3, you probably have the tools that you need to use it in a way that feels real and authentic and that communicates. But the problem is nobody ever really showed you how to take what you know, or to take these tools or techniques and actually use it in a way that feels organic, expressive, connective. So instead we're stuck in this loop. We're learning and we're practicing and we've got a gig and we're learning all these tunes, but we're never actually creating something that feels like we have ownership over it, like we're making a difference, like we are in a revolution or an advocacy of our feelings, our journey, our story through our music, and in that journey, able to connect with others. So you're not stuck because you don't know enough. You're stuck because no one has shown you how to use what you know in a way that feels like you. And that's really what this podcast is all about, learning to reconnect to our own voice, our signature sound, our fullest expression, using music, this language that we have, and sound, our voice or our tone or our signature sound on our instrument, and adding some soul to it, some depth, some purpose, some story, and some connection, because then it's meaningful. And if you're like me, you are a musician that has to create, you have to sing, you have to write, you have to express, you have to improvise, you have to create to stay alive, let alone to thrive. And wouldn't it be amazing if everything we were doing in our music practice, in our music journey, was authentic and deep and connected, and we could have this catharsis whenever we want it. This meaning was just inherent to who we are and to our art and our craft, not just to the tiny bits of free time when we weren't confined to a specific goal we had to meet, or an expectation, or an institutionalized system. How do we turn that into something that's expansive and expressive and personal and meaningful? Well, that's what Music Rebels Rising is all about. And it can start with a single note. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and it's literally like, Jacob Collier is great at this. He has these videos where he's, conducting the audience as a choir, and people go to these concerts because they expect to, sit down and receive an experience, be sort of on the outside, outside the window, on the looking glass. And Jacob brings them in so that they are actually a part of a cohesive experience. And when he goes into explaining music, the beautiful thing is that It's about the sound and the feeling and the story and how it feels. But he's doing something so freaking technical. It's like, you know what I mean? You almost have to be a musician to understand what the freak is going on over there. But he's doing something so amazing and yet explaining it in a way that any human can feel and relate, like compression or anxiety or lift or happiness. Like we all know what that feels like, to get a tingly feeling in our body or to feel suspenseful. And if we are able to be in that childlike wonder of that type of an explanation, if we are able to be with the idea that that is the most important thing when we create music. So if you take just, like 2 notes, for example, you're just playing the A note on the piano, A equals 440, the tuning note for the orchestra, or on a violin, or you're humming it in the back of your throat with, a gentle closed lip hum, or you're playing it on your saxophone. And then what's the next note you go to? Just in that decision, in that transition, begins the communication of the feeling. You go a half step up and create that tension, that classic Jaws, Pink Panther half step. Or you could sit on that A and warble the timbre and increase the vibrato and decrease it, or gently fade it out with your instrument or your voice before slowly entering to the next note, which maybe it's a whole step away. Maybe it's that beautiful 9th. Maybe it's a consonant, beautiful 3rd. But where you're going shouldn't be, or doesn't have to be, informed by a piece of sheet music or a set of rules or regimens that you have to follow. Wouldn't it be amazing if it could be informed by how you feel? And I feel like Jacob's just a great example as to somebody, like literally sat in his room. What if my A goes to B flat? And he literally tried out like all these combinations. And although we may not always have the luxury of oodles of time to sit there childlike at the piano banging on the keys, or to sing anything randomly with our voice and then say, what did I sing? Oh, I think it was a 6th. Oh, let me see what it was. We don't always have that luxury. When you collaborate with musicians that are coming from this space, and you collaborate with yourself coming from this space, it is such a different experience. And it turns what you have into something deeper and connected and more meaningful. So even if you're thinking of pick a starting note and going to the next note, get out your instrument or your voice right now and try this. Where am I going? And why? And what am I saying? And what does this feel like? And a major second to one person can feel light and lifting, and to another person can feel like this longing tension that they don't want to resolve and they want to keep in there. Maybe that becomes, the add 2 as part of a triad. Maybe that becomes just its own 2-note chord, its own dyad. Maybe it just exists in that way. But you get to experiment with that and decide. And it doesn't matter how complex or technical what you're practicing is. It matters, what does it feel like? What does it evoke? What are you saying? Where are you going with it? And so I think in this regard, it's not so much about having to practice more. It's about, hey, I know about 5,000 different combinations for these intervals, just the major scale intervals alone, let's say. And instead of practicing all of them ad nauseum, forward, backwards, upside down, through, let me figure out which ones really ring with me, really resonate, really ignite a feeling. And you all know that feeling. You might hear it on a film score, or in the latest track drop, or just in the beautiful music that you hear in nature and nature songs. But we all know that feeling, that pull, that resonance within the heart that shows us it's something that we need to feel, express, evoke, or communicate with. And my encouragement for you today, in this very first episode, is find that sound. Follow that sound. You're not stuck because you don't know enough. You just have to use what you already know in a way that feels the way that you want to feel in that moment. If this resonates, just search up Music Rebels Rising and you can join the revolution. Your music, your sound, and your next step. I'll see you then.